bringing you 8 must-add players off of the waiver wire, and I'm giving you 1 trade target if your trade deadline hasn't already gone through. Hope you had a great week 11. On to week 12 fantasy football, and we started off with the first player on the waiver wire priority for me this week. It's going to be Jonnu Smith for the Miami Dolphins, and if we look at Jonnu Smith, since week 7, Jonnu Smith has led the team in targets over Tyreek Hill. He's led the team in receiving yards over Tyreek Hill, and he's led the team in fantasy points per game over Tyreek Hill. It's actually crazy that Jonnu Smith is absolutely balling like this. And honestly, we probably should have taken it more into consideration. A lot of you guys were asking about Jonnu Smith as a start this week, and I guess I just was not buying into this overall play. Jonnu Smith entered week 11, averaging 2.26 yards per route. Since week 5, this is the 4th highest rate among tight ends. So he's getting the ball down the field. He's getting the targets. He's getting the opportunity. Absolutely insane with what Jonnu Smith is currently doing. And when we take a look over here at the PFF snap counts, I mean, dude's all over the field with him getting 55 snaps, 35 routes run, and getting those 7 targets. So I just think there's no way that we can really start to discount Jonnu Smith. Right now he's 51% rostered. That needs to be 100%. Jonnu Smith is getting into the same category as a guy like a Cade Otton from a few weeks ago, where you go get this guy, he's going to be a bona fide top 6, top 7 tight end rest of the season. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 101 yards. Absolutely incredible showing for Jonnu Smith. Definitely need to be adding him on the waiver wire. And I get it. I said 8 players. I understand you're not going to be able to add all these guys. And it's not me saying to go add 8 players. I'm just giving you the top guys that I want you to be targeting off the waiver wire. And we're going to give you 1 trade target a little bit later. But the second guy, it's going to be Anthony Richardson. The quarterback landscape this season, besides Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts, has been pretty much abysmal. Jaden Daniels has really been underperforming here recently. Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy have all been up and down. And then it's kind of the best of the rest, playing the matchups, not getting a ton of consistency out of your quarterback position. But we see Anthony Richardson come back for the Colts and put up 28 fantasy points, ran the ball for 10 times for 32 yards, threw the ball 30 times, 20 completions, 272 yards, and 1 total touchdown. We saw that full Konami code quarterback upside, 3 total touchdowns. I think that's the part, like I said, 2 rushing, 1 passing. We absolutely love to see it for Anthony Richardson. And going forward, right now he's 43% rostered. That's going to need to be about 100, because if you don't have one of those top 3 or 4 guys and you're sitting there with a quarterback like a CJ Stroud, maybe a Jared Goff as your starting level quarterback, maybe even like I know some of you have like Kirk Cousins, Tua Tagovailoa, go add Anthony Richardson. I'm not saying it's always going to be great, because we've seen the highs and we've seen the lows clearly, but I do think with them riding with Anthony Richardson the rest of the way, this was the best performance we had seen out of Anthony Richardson all season long. So you definitely are going to need to go target Anthony Richardson. Like I said, this is just incredible value that you're able to get. Really a mismanagement by the Colts organization with Anthony Richardson. I'm not saying, but it might be the best thing for him. Maybe it gave him a little bit more of an opportunity to really look at himself, give him a wake-up call, and absolutely let him come back and absolutely be a fantasy football god for us the rest of the way. The next player that you need to be adding off the waiver wire, it's going to be Jeudy for the Cleveland Browns. And this week, the Cleveland Browns wide receivers, between both him and Elijah Moore, looked really great. But this week, 26 fantasy points versus New Orleans, 11 targets, 6 receptions, 142 yards, and 1 total touchdown. Listen, it's a week 11 loss. The Browns are pretty much going to be losing, I think, the rest of the way out, because as much as we're seeing some good things from their offense, the matchups coming down the line, Pittsburgh, Denver, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, like it's just not looking good. But the good part about those bad matchups is it's going to force the Browns to throw the ball a ton. And Jeudy has essentially put up double-digit points the last 3 weeks. He's 67% rostered, so definitely maybe isn't the most waiver wire ability, but if you're in a league where he is available to go get, Jeudy is the guy that I want added to your overall team. Now, a more better option is going to be his teammate Elijah Moore, 18.6 fantasy points versus New Orleans, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 66 yards, and 1 total touchdown. He found the end zone, and Elijah Moore, his overall targets the last 3 games, 12, 9, and 8. So I think Elijah Moore, like I said, I prefer Jeudy if Jeudy's out there for you, but definitely go target Elijah Moore if he's potentially going to be out there in the ether for your fantasy football team. Like I said, these waiver wires, we're getting to a point where a lot of the good waiver wire pickups are already gone. So we kind of have to be sneaky and pretty deliberate with our decisions, whether it is with handcuff running backs, whether it is with these wide receivers, maybe not in the best offenses. Elijah Moore is someone that I'm definitely taking a look at and trying to target for my fantasy football team off the waiver wire. Now, next guy we're going to talk about, it's going to be Marquez Valdez Scantling. And this is another guy that last week he was our number 1 target that we needed to be adding off the waiver wire. This week, he's still only 35% rostered, but puts up 16 fantasy points. So it wasn't as great as 25 fantasy fantasy point day the week previous, but 4 targets, 2 receptions, 87 yards, and 1 total touchdown. Now, I said last week when we talked to the video, it was like, well, he did it on 3 targets, 3 receptions to get to 109 yards and 2 total touchdowns. Well, he had the huge catch this week, again, for a 71-yard touchdown. I'm not saying like it's like the breakout for MVS by any stretch, but it's been absolutely incredible. Now, the thing is with adding MVS, I will add in, he does have that bye in week 12, so it's maybe not the most ideal situation adding a player off the waiver wire as maybe the other guy. So I understand, especially with limited roster spots, and especially if you're kind of in contention trying to get to the playoffs, stashing or holding on to MVS for a week when he's not going to potentially be able to make your lineup could be something you need to look into. But I do really like some MVS. We keep this train rolling. And the next guy we're going to be talking about, it's going to be Cam Akers for the Minnesota Vikings. And Cam Akers, 11.6 fantasy points, only 23% rostered over on Sleeper, 10 attempts, 25 yards, 2 targets, 2 receptions for 11 yards. Now, I understand he is a handcuff to Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones has not been able to be the most durability of health, the most healthy bill of health through his career. We're looking at a guy that historically has played somewhere between 13 to 15 games. So especially as we kind of come to this point, the Minnesota Vikings offense has been humming as of late. And so Cam Akers as the clear number 2, he's overtaken Ty Chandler. So I do want to be adding Cam Akers. I think it's going to be a great add to your fantasy football roster. Definitely go take a look at Cam Akers. Like I said, 23% rostered. I prefer the guys we listed ahead of Cam Akers, whether it's an Anthony Richardson, whether it's a Jonnu Smith, a Jared Jeudy, Elijah Moore, MVS. But if you're in need of some running back help, I did want to provide a guy that I think is valuable, but maybe not the most valuable player that you could potentially had. And the last and final player that we're talking about, at least when it comes to waivers, it is going to be Tamm Hill. And Tamm Hill, shout out to Tamm Hill, literally puts up the highest fantasy football output from a tight end this season with 42.52 fantasy points. He had 10 targets, 8 receptions, 50 yards. But really what things got juicy for here with Tamm Hill is going to be with his rushing upside. He had 3 touchdowns and was the ultimate Swiss Army knife. Like we said, seven carries for 138 yards and 3 touchdowns on top of all those receptions. Like in this offense with just Alvin Kamara, MVS, they're going to have to get Tamm Hill the ball. And we've known this. It gets annoying when these games happen for Tamm Hill because it happens each and every year. So I understand. He's also going in by in week 12. Same thing with MVS. So a little bit of worry there, but it's hard to start Tamm Hill each and every week. But if you're in a deeper league or you're in a league where you have a super weak tight end spot and Tamm Hill's probably, like I said, you're maybe like tight end 9 to tight end 12 territory, Tamm Hill is definitely worthy of an add. He's 48% rostered. So him and Jonnu, I prefer Jonnu Smith. I think Jonnu Smith, his target share is going to be a little bit better rest of the season, but I do think Tamm Hill is a player that you could potentially be looking to add here as we head down the stretch. And now the last and final player, we give you some waiver wires, and typically we do 10 players, but this week I was like, you know what? We're heading into the stretch. 10 seemed like a lot. So I just wanted to give you 8. So we gave you 7 waiver wire. And my one trade target, if you still have the ability to go out and make any type of trades, it's going to be A.J. Brown for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's had pretty much a very down season comparable to A.J. Brown's typical numbers. We're looking at a guy he's the wide receiver 21 right now in fantasy football and has not eclipsed 20 fantasy points since week 6, which is not fine because I own him in a lot of spots. But I have a lot of faith in him coming down the stretch. He's going up against the Rams team in week 12, which is absolutely great because we just saw the Rams defense get absolutely ate up here on Sunday versus the Patriots. We got Baltimore, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Washington. I do like a lot of these matchups down the stretch for A.J. Brown. I understand this offense, the passing attack, it hasn't been the best this season. They've been relying on Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts' legs, but I do believe that if somehow you still have a trade deadline that has not started this season, I want to go out and target A.J. Brown. We will be putting out our last and final trade video this week. I know a lot of trade deadlines ended this last week. A lot of trade deadlines are still here over the next week. So I want to make sure that I'm not leaving out anybody. So apologies if your trade deadline has passed. But I do think A.J. Brown, if you either own him and or you still have the trade deadline up, I want to go try to see what offer I could potentially do for A.J. Brown. We'll talk about him a little more on Tuesday's video. But if you like fantasy football, if you like winning, hit that like and subscribe button. We are now on the way to 5,000 subscribers. So I appreciate you guys so much for all your support. We did hit 4,000. Appreciate each and every one of you for everything that you're doing in this community. You leave a like, you leave a comment. It helps me out so much. Want to be here to help you win a fantasy football championship, though. We're answering every start sit question down below. So if you got a question, if you got to let me know how your week 11 went, let me know your outlook for the fantasy football playoffs. We'll be putting out a lot more fantasy football playoff content this week. Appreciate you guys. Check out these 2 videos if you haven't, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.